For 300 years, the stone throne never glowed. Not once. Tonight, beneath a pair of feet no one had ever bothered to look at, it burst into light like a shattered moon. Silver flooded the hall. The symbols carved into the armrests caught cold fire, wave after wave of radiance rolling outward. The whole room stopped breathing. Not a noble's daughter. Not the bloodline they'd waited 3 centuries for. A servant girl, her uniform still stained, her heels still raw from a burst blister. She'd sat down only because she was tired, and an entire kingdom tilted on its axis. A scream tore through the air, then footsteps, fast and closing. A silver-haired old man shoved through the crowd and stormed up the dais, his face purpling with rage. His hand clamped around her wrist, meaning to rip her from the throne by force. And the throne erupted. The throne room smelled of candle wax and ambition. Iris Wesley pressed her back against the cold marble pillar and tried to disappear into it. A skill she'd spent 23 years perfecting. Because when nobody expects anything from you, staying unseen isn't a curse. It's the only armor you own. Her feet were screaming. 6 hours on her feet, refilling goblets, clearing half-eaten delicacies while high-born daughters paraded across the floor like prized cattle at auction. The selection ceremony. The night every noble family in Raven Hollow territory had been circling toward since their daughters could walk. And Iris was just the help. She watched another candidate glide past. Silk that probably cost more than Iris would earn in 5 years. The girl's mother fussed at her hair, whispering reminders about posture, about poise, about how to smile without showing too many teeth, something twisted in Iris's chest. Not envy, exactly. Just the ache of watching a world she'd never belonged to. A world with mothers who fussed. A world where you mattered enough to be corrected. Stop it, she told herself. You're here to work. Not to dream, but God. Her feet hurt. The sun bled orange through the stained glass, throwing broken rainbows across the polished floor. And in the center of everything, on a raised dais, sat the throne. Even empty, it commanded the room. Carved from stone so pale, it seemed to hold its own light. Moon phase symbols spiraled up the arms, geometric patterns that hurt to look at too long, like staring at something that existed in more dimensions than it should. Blessed by the moon goddess herself, the legend said. 300 years ago, it would know the true Luna, the one destined to lead. When she sat, the throne would glow, binding her to the land forever. It hadn't glowed once. Not in 3 centuries. Hundreds had tried. Alpha's daughters, priestesses, bloodlines stretching back to the first shifters. The throne stayed dark for every single one of them. Most people had quietly decided it was just a very old chair with a very good story. Iris's left foot throbbed, sharp, insistent. That blister had definitely burst. She glanced around. Everyone's attention was on the current candidate, a girl delivering a speech about honor and duty, with the confidence of someone who'd been told her whole life she was special. Nobody was watching the servant jaunt girl in the shadows. It's just a chair, Iris told herself. Stone and fabric. 60 seconds. Nobody would know. The pain made the decision for her. She slipped from behind the pillar, climbed 3 steps. The stone was cool under her fingers as she lowered herself down, and the relief was immediate. Overwhelming. She let her eyes close. The stone began to warm beneath her. Her eyes snapped open. That was wrong. The throne had been cold seconds ago. Now heat spread through it, into her, not burning, like sunlight on skin. Then the light started, a flicker, like a candle catching in darkness. Silver bloomed beneath her. The carved symbols flared to life on the armrests, and the whole chair began to pulse, waves of blue-white radiance rolling outward across the dais. No, 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 no. She tried to stand. Her body wouldn't listen. Not because the throne was holding her down exactly. She could move her arms, turn her head. But something at her core, the place where her body touched the seat, had welded itself into place. Gasps erupted around the hall, footsteps. The rustle of hundreds of bodies turning at once, someone screamed. It's glowing. After 300 years, it's glowing. Who is that? Is that a servant? Iris wanted the floor to open and swallow her whole. She pushed against the armrests, desperate, but the throne held fast. The light pulsed brighter with every panicked beat of her heart. Like it was feeding on her fear, Elder Corwin Vantor shoved through the crowd. A massive man, built like something meant to break things, silver hair, eyes that had never once looked at Iris with anything close to kindness. What is the meaning of this? His voice cracked like a whip across the hall. I'm trying to get up, Iris said, and her voice came out high. Thin. It won't let me. She's contaminated it, a woman shrieked from the crowd. Lady Odile Marrow, mother of one of the candidates. Her filthy hands have defiled the sacred seat. Vantor stormed up the dais steps, face purple. He reached for Iris's wrist, intending to yank her off by force. His fingers closed around her. The throne erupted. A wave of pure silver energy caught him square in the chest, sent him flying into the crowd, taking 3 others down with him. The light around Iris intensified into a barrier, a shield, crackling and clear in its message. Touch her again and face the consequences. The room descended into chaos. Because it wasn't glowing for the daughters who'd trained their whole lives for this moment. It was glowing for the nobody in the stained uniform. The one with no name, no family. The girl who'd only sat down because her feet hurt. The oak doors at the far end slammed open. The crowd parted like water. Iris had never seen him this close before. Alpha Dorian Ashvale moved like something dangerous kept carefully leashed. Tall, broad, dark hair brushing his collar. Eyes the color of a storm rolling in off the sea. His face could have been carved from the same granite as the throne, all sharp angles, hard lines. He stopped at the base of the dais. Studied her, not anger, not confusion. Something colder, sharper. A man doing arithmetic in his head, weighing costs he hadn't chosen. What's your name? His voice was deep, controlled, like a man who was very good at hiding what he actually thought. Iris, her tongue felt thick. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. My feet hurt and I just needed to sit for a minute and I didn't think. Your family name? The shame hit like a fist. I don't have one. I'm from the servants' quarters. Found as a baby. No pack. No family. I'm nobody. Something flickered across his face. Too fast to read. He turned to the crowd without taking his eyes off her. Everyone out. Alpha Dorian. You can't possibly. Vantor had found his feet again. Still furious. I set out. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. His alpha command rolled through the space like distant thunder, and even Iris, who wasn't a proper shifter, who'd never once completed a transformation, felt the weight of it pressing against her ribs. Now, the crowd moved as one, silk and fury flowing toward the exits. Iris watched their faces as they went. Lady Godile's hatred, Vantor's cold calculation, the tears on the faces of girls who'd been promised this night since birth. She'd made enemies, powerful ones, all because she needed to rest her feet. When the doors closed with a heavy thud, the silence felt like drowning. Dorian climbed the dais slowly, each step deliberate. The throne's barrier rippled but didn't strike out at him. He stopped just outside the light, close enough that she could see silver flecks in his gray eyes. Hold out your hand. What? Your hand. Give it to me. Trembling, she extended it. Small, rough, nails bitten short. A permanent stain of silver polish on her index finger. The hand of someone who served, not someone who ruled. He reached through the barrier. It parted for him like mist. His fingers closed around hers. Warm, calloused, careful. And the moment they touched, the light changed, stopped its frantic pulsing, settled into something steady, bright. It expanded to wrap around both their joined hands like ribbon. The throne hummed beneath her, a sound she felt more than heard. Like the purr of something ancient recognizing its master, or maybe recognizing them both. The throne doesn't make mistakes, he said quietly. His thumb brushed her knuckles, maybe without meaning to. 300 years, it's rejected everyone. Noble bloodlines, powerful shifters. Women raised for this from birth. All of them failed. I didn't mean to, I know. He cut her off, but not unkindly. That doesn't matter now. What matters is you're here. And you've just made a great many dangerous enemies. Can't you tell them it was a mistake? A bitter smile crossed his face. And say what? That our most sacred relic glowed for 6 hours over an error. That it attacked a council elder to defend a mistake. He shook his head. Its judgment is absolute. If I call this wrong, I'm calling the throne a liar. Her chest tightened. So what happens now? He was quiet a long moment, still holding her hand, still studying her like a puzzle he couldn't solve. Now we find out why it chose a servant with no name, no power, no training. His voice dropped, low enough that only she could hear. And we keep you alive long enough to learn the answer. He released her, stepped back. The barrier flickered but held. Guards will take you to the Luna chambers, he said, formal again. For your protection. Protection. She heard the fear crack through her own voice. Or imprisonment. That bitter smile returned. In this palace, they're often the same thing. He turned toward the doors, paused just before reaching them. Alpha Dorian. Her voice found her again, barely. Do you think the throne made a mistake? For a long moment, he just looked at her. This small, terrified girl in a servant's dress, sitting on the throne that was meant to save them, wrapped in light that shouldn't exist. I think it sees something the rest of us can't. He said it like the words cost him something, and that terrifies them more than any mistake ever could. Then he was gone. And Iris sat alone with the glowing throne, and the certainty that her small, careful, unremarkable life was over. The Luna chambers were a gilded cage. 4 guards had marched her through marble corridors without once meeting her eyes, and deposited her in rooms so lavish she'd assumed for a full minute they'd brought her to the wrong wing. Silk curtains the color of moonlight, a bed built for 6 people, windows overlooking gardens she'd only ever glimpsed while hauling laundry. A bathroom with a tub carved from a single piece of white marble, the most beautiful prison she'd ever seen. That had been 3 hours ago. Since then, she'd heard raised voices past the door, arguments, demands. The guards had changed shift twice and remained posted outside, ensuring she couldn't leave. Not that she knew where she'd go. Back to the servants' quarters. After this. They'd probably burn her cot just to be safe. Iris sat on the edge of the bed, still in her stained uniform, and tried to understand how a full day of her life had collapsed in on itself. The door burst open. Lady Odile Marrow swept in like weather. 3 other women trailed behind her, mothers of candidates, dripping wealth and barely restrained fury. The guards didn't move to stop them. Of course they didn't. You have some nerve, Odile hissed, sitting there on that bed like you belong in this room. Like you belong anywhere near that throne, Iris stood. A servant's reflex, showing respect to her betters. The movement only enraged Odile further. Don't you dare stand in my presence like we're equals. You're a servant, a foundling. No bloodline, no breeding, no right to breathe the same air as true she-wolves. I didn't mean to. Another woman cut her off, laughter sharp as a blade. You didn't mean to sit on the most sacred relic in the territory. You didn't mean to ruin the selection our daughters have prepared for their entire lives. My daughter has studied politics and pack law since she was 5. A third added, voice shaking. She can recite the moon-blessed lineage back 10 generations. And you can barely read? It stung because it was mostly true. Iris could read, poorly. Servants weren't given proper schooling. She'd taught herself scraps from discarded papers and overheard lessons, but it wasn't the same. They circled her. Predators taking their time. When my daughter sits on that throne tomorrow, Odile said, voice dropping to something almost pleasant, and when it glows for her, as it should have tonight, we'll all know the truth, that you're nothing. A glitch, an embarrassment. Tomorrow. Iris's voice cracked. Didn't they tell you? Odile's smile went poisonous. Emergency session. Every eligible candidate tries again, in proper order, with proper ceremony. Whatever dark influence you placed on that throne will be cleansed by dawn. And the true Luna revealed, they swept out, satisfied, having put the servant girl back where she belonged. Odile paused at the threshold. Enjoy your one night in these chambers, girl. By tomorrow evening you'll be back where you came from. If you're lucky. If you're not, her smile widened. Blasphemy is still a capital offense under the old laws. The door closed, Iris collapsed onto the bed. Her whole body shook. They'd do it again. The ceremony, the candidates. And this time the throne would recognize someone else. Someone worthy. And she'd be revealed as exactly the fraud she'd always suspected she was. She should have felt relieved. She didn't. Dawn arrived too fast and not fast enough. Mistress Yvain entered without knocking, her face carved from disapproval. Get up, she said. They want you in the throne room, Mistress Yvain. I'm so sorry, save it. Ice in every syllable. 20 years I've trained servants to be unseen, to serve without drawing a single eye. And you sat on the sacred Luna throne. Iris's throat burned. Yvain had never been warm, but she'd been fair. The closest thing to a mother figure Iris had ever known, and now even that was gone. Come, Yvain said, turning away, and for Moon's sake, try to look presentable. Because she had slept in her clothes. Because nobody had brought her anything else. Because she was still just a servant pretending to be something more. The throne room had transformed overnight. More guards. Grim men in formal armor who expected a fight. The council sat in a grave semicircle, and on its dais, the throne. Dormant. Ordinary. In the morning light, it looked exactly like it had before she'd touched it. Just an old chair with a good story. Bring her forward, Vantor commanded. Iris walked the length of the room, hundreds of eyes burning into her skin. Whispers followed her like smoke. Servant, fraud, nobody. She stopped at the base of the dais. The council has convened, Vantor announced. To rectify yesterday's irregularity, the sacred throne will be tested again, properly, under controlled conditions. Each candidate in order of bloodline purity. Iris had none. She was the opposite of a bloodline. She was a question mark, a blank space, a baby found in the woods with no pack scent and no name. Should the throne accept a candidate? Vantor continued, eyes fixed on Iris with undisguised contempt. Yesterday's incident will be forgotten as a temporary anomaly. Should it remain dark for all candidates, the girl faces trial for blasphemy. A death sentence, he said it plainly. Like reading a grocery list, one by one, the candidates tried. Daughters of alphas, granddaughters of previous lunas, bloodlines you could trace back to the first shifters. Each one climbed the dais with hope burning in her eyes. Each one sat. Each one faced the same result. Darkness, silence, rejection. After the seventh failure, panic rippled through the crowd. These were supposed to be the finest candidates the territory had to offer. If the throne wouldn't accept any of them, then what? This is her doing, someone shouted, pointing at Iris. She's cursed it. Burn the witch. The guards moved closer. Iris wanted to protest that she didn't know a single spell, that she couldn't even make basic moon water properly, but terror had stolen her voice. Enough. Dorian's voice cut through the room like a blade. He climbed the dais, stood before the throne, expression unreadable. Everyone has failed, he said. Every candidate of proper bloodline, proper training, proper breeding. Perhaps the problem isn't the girl. His eyes swept the room. Perhaps it's our assumptions, Alpha Dorian. Surely you're not suggesting, Vantor began. I'm suggesting we test the obvious. He looked down at Iris. Come here, no, Odile shrieked. You can't let her touch it again. If she cursed it, Dorian said, calm, then having her sit should make no difference. It will remain dark. We'll have our proof. Iris's legs felt like water as she climbed. Every eye tracked her. She sat. The throne exploded with light. Silver radiance burst from the stone like a small sun, flooding the dais, spilling down the steps. The carved symbols blazed so bright people in the front rows shielded their eyes. Chaos, Iris heard shouting. Accusations. She was lost in the sensation of the throne's recognition, the warmth spreading through her bones. It felt like coming home after a lifetime of wandering. Like finally being seen, someone rushed the dais. One of the rejected candidates, face twisted with fury. If I can't have it, neither can you. The barrier snapped into existence. A wall of silver fire, throwing the woman back into the crowd. Burns marked her hands where she'd touched it. Get her off it, someone yelled. Guards approached, weapons drawn. Stand down. Dorian's command carried alpha authority that even the council couldn't override. The guards lowered their weapons. He turned to face the assembled crowd. The throne has spoken. Twice. In front of witnesses. Under controlled conditions. It rejects everyone but her. She's a servant. Lady Odile again. She has no bloodline. No training. What she doesn't have, Dorian interrupted, is your approval. But she has the thrones. And according to our oldest laws, the ones you all claim to respect, its choice is absolute. This violates every tradition. Vantor's face had gone purple. Then perhaps what we call tradition needs examining. His words fell into the room like stones into still water. 300 years it rejected everyone proper, every pure bloodline, every prepared daughter of the elite. Maybe it was waiting for something different. A voice rang out from the back of the hall before Vantor could respond. Let her prove it then. Every head turned. Candor Bramhollis stood among the soldiers along the wall. A weathered man, silver, threading through his beard, a scar tracing the line of his jaw that most people knew better than to ask about. He'd served 3 alphas, Dorian's father among them. 30 years in the ranks, and not once, in living memory, had he raised his voice in a council hall. He was raising it now. Commander, Vantor said tight. This is a council matter. It's a matter of honor. Bram walked forward, unhurried, the way a man walks when he's already decided something and doesn't much care what the room thinks about it. I fought beside Alpha Dorian's father for 20 years. I buried men who trusted our word when we gave it. And I have never, not once, seen this throne glow. He stopped at the base of the dais, looked up at Iris like he was actually seeing her for the first time. Not the servant, not the accusation, her, it's glowing now. Twice. Front of witnesses, superstition, Vantor spat, is not evidence, no. Bram's voice didn't rise, it didn't need to. But I've spent 30 years watching men decide who deserves loyalty based on birth. And I've watched good soldiers die under bad leaders because nobody had the spine to say, the emperor's got no clothes. He turned, slow, to face the council box directly. I'll stake my rank on it. My pension. Whatever's left of my name in this territory. The throne isn't lying. You just don't like what it's telling you. The silence that followed had weight because Bram Hollis didn't make speeches. Everyone in that hall knew it. Which was exactly why it landed like a hammer. Vanter's jaw worked. He looked for the first time, less like a man in control of a room, and more like a man watching control slip through his fingers. The council will convene to discuss this matter, he said finally, voice tight as a wire. Until then, the girl remains in the Luna chambers, under guard. The throne is not to be touched by anyone, agreed. Dorian's eyes flicked to the guards. Escort her back. Make sure no one gets past you this time. She's under my personal protection. The words rippled through the crowd. Personal protection from an alpha meant something. A claim of responsibility. Dorian was choosing a side, and everyone in that hall understood exactly what that meant. As the guards surrounded her, Iris caught fragments of whispered conversation. Can't possibly accept her. Found in the woods like an animal, my daughter deserved that throne. The last one hit hardest because it was probably true, and Iris had no answer for it. She glanced back once, at the doorway. The throne sat ordinary and silent again on its dais. And beside it, Bram Hollis stood with his arms crossed, watching her go with an expression she couldn't quite name. Not pity, something closer to respect. The chambers felt smaller now. Iris curled on the window seat, watching dawn's first light fade into full morning over the gardens. She'd been locked in these rooms for 2 days since the second ceremony. 2 days of isolation, broken only by silent guards delivering meals and Yvain's cold visits to check she hadn't destroyed anything expensive. Nobody spoke to her. Nobody explained anything. She was a problem they'd locked away while they figured out what to do with her. She pressed her forehead against the cool glass, let herself remember the things she usually tried to forget. She'd been 12 the first time. She'd felt the pull, full moon, late summer, air thick with pine and wild things. All the young shifters brought to the ceremonial grounds for their first transformation. A rite of passage, Iris had been there too. Technically the right age, even though everyone whispered that foundlings like her probably couldn't shift at all. She'd felt it, though. Something inside her responding to the moon's call, twisting, pulling beneath her skin, pain lancing through her bones as they tried to reshape themselves. Her fingernails had sharpened. Fur had begun to sprout along her arms. Then nothing. The transformation stalled halfway, leaving her gasping on the ground in agony. Caught between human and wolf, belonging to neither, the other children finished shifting around her. Became beautiful wolves with sleek fur and bright eyes. And Iris stayed stuck, broken. Wrong, the pack healer had examined her afterward, expression grave. Something's blocking her transformation, he'd said. Like a wall inside her that won't come down. I've never seen anything like it. After that, they stopped bringing her to the ceremonial grounds. Quietly removed from the lists of young shifters, reassigned to servant duties. Nobody had been cruel about it. They'd simply wasn't expecting anything from her, and now the entire territory was staring, and all they saw was a fraud sitting on a throne she couldn't possibly deserve. A knock made her jump. Not the casual bang of guards, not Yvain's impatient rap, different, polite. Almost hesitant, come in. Iris called, voice rough. The door opened. Dorian entered, carrying a covered tray. Dressed casually, sleeves rolled, forearms marked with old scars. Without the formal armor, he looked younger. Still dangerous. More human. The guard said you haven't eaten today. Iris stared. You brought me food. Don't you have servants? A ghost of a smile. I do. But they're terrified of you right now. Apparently the girl who made the sacred throne glow might curse them if they look at her wrong. He set down the tray, lifted the cover, revealing bread, cheese, fruit, a few pastries glazed gold. Besides, I wanted to talk to you. Privately. Her stomach growled traitorously. Iris moved to the table, broke off a piece of bread. Expected interrogation. Instead, he sat across from her. Tell me about where you came from. I don't know where I came from. That's the whole, tell me what you do know. Nobody had asked like that before. Like the answer actually mattered. I was found at the edge of Raven Hollow territory, she said finally. 23 years ago. Worst winter in recorded history. A patrol found me abandoned near the northern border. Just a baby, wrapped in a blanket, no pack scent, no markings, nothing to identify where I came from. Or someone went to great lengths to hide your origins, Dorian said quietly. She looked up sharply. What? It takes powerful magic to erase pack scent and genetic markers completely. Whoever left you didn't just abandon a baby. They made sure no one could trace you back to them. The thought had never occurred to her. She'd always assumed her parents were dead, or hadn't wanted her, but what if it was something else? Something deliberate. The council debated what to do with me, she continued, pushing down a dangerous flutter of hope. The old elder's wife convinced them to let me stay, show mercy. She died when I was 3. After that, I was just here. A charity case. Did you have friends? Anyone who cared. The other servant children were kind enough. But we all knew I was different. The one with no family, no pack, no future. And when I couldn't shift, she trailed off, old shame rising. Even the other servants stopped seeing me as one of them. Dorian was quiet a long moment. When I was 15, he said finally, "My father declared me unfit to inherit." Iris's eyes widened. Not what she expected. I was too weak, too soft, too concerned with fairness instead of pure power. He said I'd never command respect, that the pack would tear itself apart under my leadership. His jaw tightened. He chose my younger brother as heir instead. But you're alpha now. What happened? My brother died leading a raid against the Eastern Territory. Glorious death in battle. Exactly what he'd always wanted. A sharp, humorless smile. And suddenly the unfit son was all my father had left. "I'm sorry," Iris whispered. "Don't be. I'm not telling you this for sympathy." He leaned forward. "I'm telling you because I understand what it feels like to be told you're not enough. To watch everyone see only your inadequacy." His hand moved across the table, stopping just short of touching hers. "Maybe the throne sees what they refuse to. Survival is its own kind of strength." Tears burned behind her eyes. She blinked them back. "But I can't even shift. How can I be a Luna if I can't access the most basic part of what we are? I don't know," he admitted. "But the throne does. And right now, its judgment is the only one that matters." He stood, moving to the window. "The council meets tomorrow. Vantor's pushing hard for your removal. Claims of magical interference. He has support from most of the noble families, so I'll be executed. Not if I claim you first." The words has hung there. "What? As Alpha, I can claim you as my mate. It's within my rights. It would force the council to accept you, regardless of bloodline. A mate of the Alpha automatically holds Luna status." "You don't even know me. You're the woman the throne chose," he said. "And right now, that makes you the most important person in this territory, whether you feel ready or not. That's not a reason to bond with someone. That's political strategy." "Yes," he said simply. "It is. I won't lie to you about that. The honesty was somehow worse than a pretty lie would have been. So what? We perform some ceremony and suddenly, I'm your Luna and everything is fine. No. We perform the ceremony and then deal with 50 other crises that follow. Noble families who wanted their daughters in this position. Council members who see you as a threat. Neighboring territories who'll view a foundling Luna as weakness to exploit." He crossed the room, stopping in front of her. "It won't be fine, Iris. It will be a war. But at least you'll be alive to fight it. Why do you even care? You could let them remove me. Choose someone appropriate. Maintain the status quo." He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. "Because I'm tired of watching tradition crush anyone who doesn't fit the mold." His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "Maybe I want to believe the throne saw something real. That you were chosen for a reason, even if we can't understand it yet. You don't have to decide now," he said, straightening. "Think about it tonight. Tomorrow, when the council convenes, I'll need your answer, and if I say no, then I'll do what I can to protect you. But my options will be limited. They'll likely exile you at best, execute you at worst." The door closed behind him with a soft click, and Iris was alone again with her impossible choice. Night fell. She still couldn't decide. She paced the chambers, wearing a path in the expensive carpet. Bond with the Alpha, a man she barely knew, who saw her as a strategic necessity as much as a person. Refuse and face almost certain death for the crime of sitting in the wrong chair, some choice. Around midnight, she gave up on sleep and returned to the window seat. The full moon hung heavy, its silver light spilling across the gardens like liquid metal. Beautiful, cold, distant, just like the destiny everyone kept trying to force on her. She pressed her hand to the glass and thought about her life. Really thought about it. Without the practiced gratitude she usually wrapped around her pain, 23 years making herself small, swallowing every insult, absorbing every message that she didn't matter, and what had it gotten her? A cot in the servants' quarters and the perpetual feeling of being one mistake away from being thrown out. The throne had seen her. For 6 hours, she'd mattered. A sound from the corner made her spin around. A figure emerged from the shadows near the door. How had they gotten past the guards? An ancient woman, bent with age, robes marked with symbols Iris didn't recognize. Her eyes were clouded white, but somehow she looked directly at Iris with perfect accuracy. Who? The woman raised a gnarled hand. Hush, child. We don't have much time. Her voice was like wind through dead leaves. They'll discover I'm here soon, and there are things you need to know before tomorrow's judgment. How did you get past the guards? A dry laugh. I am Priestess Ione. I was performing sacred rites when your great-grandparents were still pups. A few guards don't concern me. She moved closer, surprisingly spry. Come, we must go to the chamber beneath the throne room. The truth of your bloodline waits there, my bloodline. Hope and fear tangled in Iris's chest. You know where I came from? I know what you are? Ione corrected. Where you came from is a longer story, and time is short. Will you come? Or will you face tomorrow's council still believing yourself worthless? Iris looked at the door, at the guards beyond it, at the gilded cage that had become her world. Then she looked at the strange priestess with her clouded eyes and forbidden knowledge. Really. There was only one choice. Show me, Iris said. Ione smiled, revealing teeth that seemed too sharp for her age. Finally. Someone with sense, she pulled a small vial from her robes, uncorked it. Silver smoke poured out, spreading across the floor like fog. Walk through the smoke. It will take you where you need to be. A pause. And child. When you see what you truly are, don't run from it. The throne knew. It's time you knew too. Iris stepped into the smoke. The world dissolved around her. The silver smoke carried her through impossible spaces. Iris felt herself falling, floating, being pulled through corridors that shouldn't exist. The Luna chambers disappeared, replaced by swirling mist and the sensation of passing through layers of reality. Like curtains parting one after another, her stomach lurched. Before panic could fully set in, her feet touched solid stone. The smoke dissipated. She stood in a vast underground room carved entirely from black stone veined with silver. The ceiling arched high above, covered in constellations that glowed with their own light. Not painted, actually luminescent, as if someone had trapped real stars in the rock. Pillars rose throughout the space, each one carved with symbols and scenes that seemed to shift in her peripheral vision. And everywhere, on the walls, the floor, even the pillars, words had been etched in a language Iris couldn't read but somehow understood. Prophecies, welcome to the chamber of moon-sung truths. Ione's voice echoed from behind her. More solid here. More real. This place exists beneath the throne room. Hasn't been opened in 300 years. Not since the last true Luna walked these halls. Why bring me here? Iris's voice sounded too loud in the sacred silence. Because the answers you seek were written long before you were born. Ione moved to the center, where a circular pool of water reflected the star-covered ceiling. Come. Look into the mirror of origins. It shows what was, what is, what might be. Iris approached slowly. Each step weighted with significance. The pool's surface was perfectly still. When she peered in, expecting her own reflection, she saw nothing. The water showed an empty reflection. As if she didn't exist at all, panic fluttered in her chest. I don't see anything, exactly. Ione's voice went soft. You have no reflection because your origin was deliberately erased. Someone wanted to ensure you could never be traced back to your true bloodline. But why? Who would do that? Instead of answering, Ione raised her hands over the pool, spoke in a language that made Iris's bones vibrate. Words that tasted of moonlight and ancient power. The water began to swirl, slowly, then faster. Images flickered across its surface, blurred and fragmented like memories viewed through broken glass. A woman running through snow, breath forming white clouds in freezing air, arms wrapped around a bundle. A baby. Fear and reverberation etched into her beautiful face. The scene shifted. The same woman before a circle of robed figures pleading. One stepped forward, placed glowing hands on the baby. Light erupted, whiting out the vision. When it faded, the woman was alone at the edge of a forest. She knelt in the snow, placed the wrapped bundle beneath a tree. Tears streaming as she pressed something against the baby's chest, a pendant that glowed briefly before sinking into the infant's skin and disappearing. Then she stood, took one last look at the child she was abandoning, and ran into the darkness. The water stilled. Iris stared, heart pounding. That was my mother, yes, she gave me up. To protect me, the realization hit like a physical blow. All these years she'd assumed she was unwanted, discarded. But that woman's face had been destroyed by grief. Not indifference, your mother was Luna Isidora of the Northern Wildlands, Ione said quietly. She fled her territory 23 years ago, during what history calls the Great Purge, a systematic elimination of anyone carrying the ancient Luna bloodline. I don't understand. Why would anyone want to eliminate Lunas? Ione gestured to the walls. Read the prophecy, child. It's written here in the language of your blood. You'll understand it even if you've never seen these symbols before. Iris turned to the nearest pillar. The symbols glowed softly as she approached, and Ionsai said she could somehow read them. When the throne has darkened for 3 centuries, when the old bloodlines have forgotten their purpose, a Luna shall rise with no name to claim, born of the forgotten, marked by the moon. She who was erased shall restore what was lost. The throne will know her, though she knows not herself. Power dormant shall wake to her touch, and through her the ancient pact shall be renewed, or broken forever. And the territories fall to shadow. Iris's hands trembled as she traced the symbols. This is about me, yes. There's more. She will bear no pack scent, for she is of all packs and none. She will shift not, for her true form transcends the wolf. She will be rejected by those who should embrace her, and embraced by the throne that has rejected all others. My inability to shift, Iris breathed. It's not because I'm broken. Your true form is something else entirely, Ione finished. The ancient Lunas weren't simply powerful shifters, child. They were bridges between worlds. Conduits for the moon goddess's power on Earth. They could take wolf form, yes. But that was the least of what they were. Then why can't I do anything? Why do I just feel empty? Because your mother had your power sealed. To protect you, Ione's expression turned grave. The ritual performed when you were an infant didn't just erase your pack scent and markers. It locked away your Luna abilities. Made you appear powerless. The kind of child no one would look at twice. The Great Purge, Iris said slowly. Someone was hunting Luna bloodlines. My mother hid me by making me seem worthless, exactly. But she couldn't erase the throne's recognition. It's older than any seal, any magic. It knows what you are beneath the locks and walls, even if you don't. Tears burned in Iris's eyes. All those years of feeling broken, defective, less than everyone around her, and it had been intentional. A sacrifice made by a mother who'd loved her enough to let her go. Why show me this now? Her voice was thick. Why not years ago? Because the throne wasn't glowing years ago. Because you weren't ready years ago. Ione's clouded eyes somehow held infinite depth. The seal was designed to break gradually. Once the throne recognized you and restored what was taken, I still can't access my power. The throne glows, but I don't feel any different. The seal is cracking, not shattered. It takes time. Ione moved to another wall, a large circular carving dominating the space. Come here. There's something you need to see. The carving depicted a woman surrounded by silver flames, arms raised to the moon. Around her, smaller figures bowed, not in submission, but in reverence. And carved into her chest, right over her heart, was a symbol that made Iris's breath catch. She'd seen it before, without thinking. She pressed her hand to her own chest, below the collarbone. There, hidden beneath her uniform, was a birthmark she'd always had. A crescent moon wrapped around a star. She'd thought nothing of it her entire life. That's not a birthmark, Ione said softly. That's the mark of the moon blessed. Every true Luna carries it, placed on them by the goddess herself at birth. Your mother's sealing ritual couldn't erase it. It's too fundamental to what you are. Iris pulled down her collar, staring. In the strange light of the chamber, it seemed to pulse faintly. In time with her heartbeat, all this time I thought it was just me, just something ordinary. Nothing about you is ordinary, Iris. You've just been taught to believe you are. The weight of it all crashed over her, the prophecy. Her mother's sacrifice, the reason for her powerlessness. The truth of what she was supposed to become. It was too much, too big, except she wasn't just a servant who'd sat in the wrong chair. She never had been. There's one more thing you need to understand, Ione said, voice taking a harder edge. The great purge that scattered your mother's people. It was orchestrated by someone within Raven Hollow territory. Someone with enough power to command assassins, enough influence to cover it up, Enough fear of the ancient bloodlines to want them eliminated entirely. Ice flooded Iris's veins. You're saying someone here, in this territory, murdered Luna bloodlines deliberately. I'm saying the person who ordered your mother hunted is likely still alive. Still in power. And still very threatened by your existence. Ion's expression was grim. The throne choosing you didn't just elevate you. Child, it painted a target on your back. Visible to the very people who tried you once before, Elder Vantor, Iris whispered. He's been pushing hardest for my removal. He's the one calling for execution. Vantor is old enough to have been involved. Yes, but he's not clever enough to have planned it alone. There are others. Council members, noble families, people who benefited from the old Lunas being eliminated. Ione moved closer, voice urgent. Tomorrow when the council convenes, they will do everything in their power to remove you. Not because you lack bloodline, because you have too much of it. You're the return of something they thought they'd successfully destroyed. Iris's mind raced. Alpha Dorian offered to claim me as mate. Force the council to accept me. A political alliance, Ione said thoughtfully. Smart. It would give you protection and legitimacy. She paused. But tell me, do you trust him? I don't know, Iris admitted. He says he understands what it's like to be rejected. He seems genuine. But I barely know him. There's another matter you should know, before you decide, Ione said, and something careful entered her voice. The Marrow family had an understanding with him. Before the throne glowed, a quiet arrangement meant to bind their houses together. Iris's stomach dropped. An engagement, a promise made by his father. Not fully honored, not fully broken. You should know it exists before you give him your answer tomorrow. Trust once given blindly is easily spent. Then how do I know anything he tells me is true? You don't. Not yet. Trust your instincts. The throne chose you for a reason, not just your bloodline, but who you are beneath all the locks and seals. Ione pulled something from her robes. A small vial filled with liquid that shimmered like captured moonlight. Drink this before you sleep tonight. It will help the seal crack further. Give you enough to fend yourself if necessary. Iris took the vial with shaking hands. What if I'm not ready? What if I can't be what the prophecy says I should be? Then you fail. And the territories fall to shadow, and everyone dies. Ione's bluntness was almost refreshing after days of political dancing. But I don't think you'll fail. You know why? Why? Because you've already done the hardest part. You survived. Everything else is just details. She raised her hands as silver smoke gathered around them. It's time for you to return. The guards will be doing their rounds soon, and we can't have them finding your chambers empty. She gripped Iris's shoulders, clouded eyes boring into hers with unexpected intensity. Remember this, Luna Iris of the Forgotten Line. The throne doesn't make mistakes. Your mother didn't sacrifice everything for nothing. And you are not, have never been, worthless. You are exactly what this territory needs. Even if they're too blind to see it yet, the smoke swallowed her whole. Iris materialized back in the Luna chambers, gasping and disoriented. The room looked exactly as she'd left it. Moonlight through the windows, the bed undisturbed, guards' footsteps echoing in the hall outside, as if she'd never left. But everything had changed. She moved to the mirror over the vanity, stared at her reflection. Same plain face, same worn uniform, same messy hair and tired eyes. But now she saw herself differently. She pulled down her collar and looked at the mark, faintly glowing in the dim light. Not a birthmark. A brand, Luna Isidora's daughter, the prophesied Luna, the girl who was supposed to save them all or watch them fall to shadow. No pressure. Iris laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. Then she uncorked the vial Ione had given her and drank the moonlight liquid in one gulp. It tasted like starlight and promises, cool and bright and terrifying. Power rushed through her like a dam breaking. Not at the full flood, Ione had been clear about that, but enough to feel the change. Her senses sharpened. Colors became more vivid. She could hear conversations 3 floors down, smell the distinct scent of each guard posted outside her door, feel the pull of the moon like a physical tether connecting her to something vast and ancient. Her body began to ache. Not painfully, with the sensation of something trying to unfold inside her, the seal cracking. Just as Ione had promised, she stood at the window as the crack widened inside her, watching the gardens turn silver under a moon that suddenly felt like it was watching her back. Tomorrow the council would call her to answer. Tomorrow she'd have to decide about Dorian's offer, and whether trust could survive a secret she now carried and he didn't know she had. Tomorrow, the throne room. And whatever came after, she pressed her palm flat against the cool glass and let herself believe, just for a moment, that she was exactly where she was supposed to be, because for the first time in 23 years, someone had told her the truth. And the truth, it turned out, was heavier than any lie she'd ever carried. But it was hers. Dawn came with drums. Iris woke to the sound before she understood what it was. Deep, rhythmic, pounding through the stone floor and up through the soles of her feet. A sound that hadn't echoed through Raven Hollow in 50 years, according to the guard who'd whispered it to another guard outside her door, thinking she couldn't hear. The traditional call to trial. This was the second night since the second ceremony, the guard had also said, and dawn tomorrow meant the council would finally have its answer. She lay still for a moment, let the sound settle into her bones. Because today wasn't about surviving another humiliation. Today the council would demand her answer. And somewhere underneath the fear, something else had taken root overnight. Something that felt almost like resolve. She rose. Dressed in the clothes left folded on the chair. Practical. Dark. Nothing like the silks Odile Marrow's daughters wore. The mark beneath her collarbone pulsed once. Warm, steady, a reminder of what Ione had shown her in that buried chamber, and what still coiled unused beneath her skin. A knock, 2 quick raps. A pause. She knew that knock now. Come in. Dorian entered, dressed simply, none of the ceremonial armor from 2 days before. He looked for a moment like a man and not an alpha, which only made what she had to ask harder. You look like you didn't sleep, he said. I didn't. She studied him, searching for something she wasn't sure she'd recognize even if she found it. I need to ask you something. And I need the truth. Something shifted behind his eyes. All right, the Marrow family. She watched his face carefully. Was there an arrangement between your house and theirs? Before the throne glowed silence, not the silence of a man caught. The silence of a man deciding how much of the truth would actually help her. Yes, he said finally. Her stomach dropped even though she'd braced for it. My father arranged it, Dorian continued. Years ago. A quiet understanding. Celine Marrow and me uniting the houses. I never agreed to it, never confirmed it. But I never publicly refused it either. Because refusing meant war with a powerful family, and I was 15 and newly named heir and terrified of losing what little ground I had. And now. Now it doesn't matter what I agreed to as a boy who was afraid of his own father. His voice hardened. I ended it. Formally. The morning after the throne first glowed, before you woke in these chambers. I sent word to Lord Marrow myself. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't think it mattered until it did. He crossed the room. Stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head up. Who told you? Does it matter? It matters if someone's using it to make you doubt me before you've even decided whether to trust me at all. She almost smiled. Almost. That's exactly what it's doing. Then I'm glad you asked instead of just believing it. His storm gray eyes held hers, steady. I won't lie to you again. Even by omission. You deserve better than half-truths dressed up as protection. Iris studied his face a long moment, looking for the lie. Finding none she could name. Trust, once given blindly, is easily spent. Ione's warning rang in her memory. I'm not giving you blind trust, she said quietly. I'm giving you a chance to earn the real thing. Something eased in his shoulders. Like he'd been braced for a blow that hadn't landed. That's more than I expected, he said. Given everything, don't get used to it. But there was no heat behind the words. Just exhaustion, and something else underneath it she didn't have a name for yet. He held out his hand. Not the ceremonial offering from before. Just an ordinary gesture. A man offering to walk beside someone through something difficult. Councils assembled, he said. Full tribunal this time. Not a simple hearing. What does that mean? It means they'll bring evidence. Witnesses. Accusations. They'll try to break you down publicly, so even if I claim you as mate, your authority as Luna is destroyed before it begins. His jaw tightened. The truth won't matter to them. Only the narrative. Iris took a slow breath. Felt the mark under her collarbone pulse again, warm and insistent, like something reminding her it was still there. Still hers. Then we'll build a better narrative, she said. The grand hall was packed beyond anything Iris had seen. Every council member, every noble family, every person of influence in the territory, crammed into tiered seating that rose on both sides, creating something closer to an arena than a court. At the far end, elevated, sat 12 chairs for 12 elders. Vantor in the center, looking like a king about to pass sentence, And in the middle of it all, isolated on its own dais, the sacred throne. Dark, silent, waiting. The crowd's noise died as Iris entered. Hundreds of eyes tracked her down the central aisle. She kept her chin level, her steps steady, even though every instinct screamed at her to run. Dorian walked beside her, a silent statement. She was under his protection. "We are gathered," Vantor's voice boomed, "to render judgment on the matter of Iris, foundling servant of Ravenhollow, who claims the right to sit upon the sacred Luna throne by virtue of its recognition." He paused. "Let the weight settle. This council will determine whether such recognition is genuine or the result of magical interference. Deception. Forces that seek to undermine our sacred traditions. The throne's recognition is not in question," Dorian said, and his alpha command made several council members flinch. It glowed twice, in front of hundreds of witnesses, under controlled conditions. "The throne's judgment is absolute, according to our oldest laws. Laws written when the throne could be trusted." Vantor's gaze fixed on Iris like she was something diseased. 300 years of silence suggests its magic may have deteriorated. Or been corrupted. "You're suggesting I corrupted a relic blessed by the moon goddess herself." Iris's voice came out stronger than she expected. "I'm a servant who can barely light a candle with moon magic. How exactly would I accomplish that?" "That," Vantor smiled coldly, "is precisely what we intend to discover." He gestured to the side of the hall. "Bring in the first witness." A woman was escorted forward. Older, thin, nervous. Iris recognized her from the kitchens. Someone she'd worked beside for years. "State your name." "I'm Margaret, Your Eminence." "Head cook's assistant." "How long have you known the accused?" "Since she was a child, Your Eminence." "Tell the council what you observed." Margaret's eyes darted to Iris. Apologetic. "Afraid." "She was always strange, Your Eminence." Kept to herself. "And she was always watching. Studying us. Studying you." Vantor's tone gathered information like it gathered fuel for a fire. "Did she ever demonstrate unusual abilities? Unexplained knowledge?" Margaret hesitated. Iris watched the woman's internal war play out on her face. Tell the truth and help her, or lie and protect herself. Self-preservation won. There were times she knew things she shouldn't. Once she knew the head cook had burned a roast before anyone saw it. And another time she predicted the old alpha would fall ill. 3 days before he did, gasps rippled through the hall. Iris's heart sank. The roast had smelled burned. The old alpha had looked pale for days. But framed like this, they sounded sinister. Precognition, Vantor said, or communication with dark forces that gave her information. Either way, evidence of powers she deliberately hid while infiltrating our household. That's ridiculous. I was a child. Silence. Vantor's command cracked through the hall. "You will speak only when addressed directly. One more outburst and you'll be removed and judged in absentia." Dorian's hand found hers. Squeezed once. A warning. "Pick your battles." More witnesses followed. Innocent moments twisted into evidence of conspiracy. The time she'd taken extra bread, clearly stealing for blood rituals. The time she'd been found reading in the library, obviously studying forbidden magic. 23 years of an unremarkable life, reconstructed into the biography of a dark sorceress. Then Vantor called his final witness, and Iris's blood turned to ice. Mistress Yvain, the head servant, entered with her spines rigid. Face carefully neutral, she'd trained Iris, supervised her, been the closest thing to family Iris had ever known. And now she stood before the council, ready to testify. "Mistress Yvain," Vantor said, warm like greeting an old friend, "how many years have you served this household?" 20 years, Your Eminence. "And you personally oversaw the girl's training and placement?" "I did, in your professional opinion." "Was there anything unusual about her?" Yvain was quiet a long moment. Iris held her breath. "Say something kind. Please." "Just one thing. She was too smart for her station," Yvain said finally, each word measured. "Most foundlings accept their place, understand the charity extended to them. But Iris always had questions, always wanted to know why things were done certain ways. Always pushing boundaries. Ambitious," Vantor said. "Resentful, perhaps, of her lowly position. Perhaps. Would you say she had reason to want to elevate herself? To seek power she wasn't entitled to, I believe," Yvain said slowly. "That every servant dreams of being more than they are. Whether they act on those dreams is another matter. It wasn't a direct condemnation. It didn't need to be. Something cracked inside Iris's chest. Not the seal on her power. Something more fragile. The last thread of hope that someone from her old life would stand up for her. Because nobody did. They were all too afraid. Or too angry. Or too convinced she was exactly what the council claimed she was, a threat. The evidence is clear, Vantor declared, turning to the crowd. We have a girl of unknown origin demonstrating unexplained abilities, who conveniently positioned herself to touch the throne during a sacred ceremony. The so-called recognition was almost certainly magical interference designed to. Then let her prove it. A voice called from the crowd. Every head turned. Bram Hollis stood among the soldiers along the wall, exactly where he'd been 2 days before. He moved down the aisle, unhurried, and this time no one told him to sit back down. Commander, Vantor said, irritation bleeding through his controlled tone. You have something to contribute, I do. Bram stopped beside Iris. Looked down at her with something unexpected in his weathered face. Not curiosity this time. Certainty. You claim she used dark magic to corrupt the throne. Fine. Test her properly. If she has the power to manipulate a relic blessed by the moon goddess, surely she has the power to defend herself in a proper Luna's trial. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the hall. Vantor's expression darkened. You're suggesting a trial by combat. I'm suggesting we give her a chance to prove the throne didn't make a mistake. Bram's eyes never left Vantor's. Every Luna in our history has proven herself through trials. Combat. Strategy. Power demonstration. If she's truly Luna material, she should pass the same tests. If she fails, we have our answer. If she succeeds, he shrugged, then maybe the throne knew what it was doing all along. This is highly irregular, Vantor protested. But other council members were nodding, whispering among themselves. It's traditional, Bram countered. Why should this one be different? I'll fail, Iris thought, desperate. I can't fully shift, can't fight, can't access most of my power. They're setting me up for public humiliation followed by execution. Then she felt Dorian's hand on her back. Steadying, his voice, low, meant only for her. This is better than immediate conviction. At least this way you have a chance. A chance. The smallest, thinnest thread of possibility. Vantor clearly sensed the room slipping away from him. Very well. The accused will face 3 trials. Combat prowess, strategic thinking, power manifestation. His smile turned cruel. She will have until sunset tomorrow to prepare. After all, we want to give her every advantage, 24 hours, to learn to fight, to demonstrate leadership she didn't have. To unlock power still sealed inside her, it was impossible. And when she fails all 3, Odile Marrow called from her seat, satisfaction dripping from every word. What then? Then, Vantor said, gaze locked on Iris, she will be exiled from Raven Hollow permanently, forbidden from ever returning on pain of death. And the throne will be cleansed of whatever corruption she introduced. A pause. Additionally, any who supported her claim, any who vouched for her authenticity, will be held accountable for their poor judgment. The threat was clear. If Iris failed, Dorian paid the price too. His position, his authority, possibly his life. This is blackmail, Dorian growled. This is justice, Vantor countered. Now, do we have the accused's agreement to these terms? Or does she prefer immediate exile without trial? Iris looked at the throne, sitting dark and silent on its dais. She thought about her mother, who had sacrificed everything to keep her alive. About Ion's words, you survived. Everything else is just details. About the prophecy carved into ancient walls, she who was erased shall restore what was lost. She'd spent 23 years letting other people decide her worth. Maybe it was time to stop. I accept, Iris said, and her voice carried through the hall. I'll take your trials, all 3. And when I pass them, this council will acknowledge what the throne already knows. That I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. The confidence was pure bluff. Inside, she was terrified. But she'd learned something from years of being unseen. Sometimes you had to fake being brave until the bravery caught up. Vantor's expression suggested he knew she was bluffing. And looked forward to watching her fail. Excellent. The trials commence tomorrow at dawn in the ceremonial arena. Until then, the accused remains in the Luna chambers under guard. Dismissed, the crowd erupted into conversation as people filed out. Iris caught fragments. Bets being placed on how badly she'd fail. Speculation about who'd be chosen after her exile. Sly faction that the servant girl would finally be put in her place. Dorian leaned close as the guards moved to escort her out. 24 hours. We'll use every minute. Bram's the best combat instructor in the territory. He'll work with you. How? Iris whispered. Most of my abilities are still sealed. I felt a little break last night. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Then we break more of it. His jaw was set. Your mother sealed your power to protect you. But you're not a helpless infant anymore. You're a woman facing execution if you can't access what's already yours. That kind of necessity has a way of shattering barriers. The guards surrounded them, preventing further conversation. As they led her toward the chambers, Iris caught sight of faces in the crowd. Some pitying, most satisfied. A few uncertain, but one face stood out, Priestess Ione. Half hidden in shadow near a pillar. Her clouded eyes met Iris's, and she gave the smallest nod. The throne doesn't make mistakes. Iris held on to that as the guards locked her back in her gilded cage. 24 hours to become someone she'd never been. 24 hours to unlock power she couldn't control. 24 hours to prove she deserved to exist. Somewhere in the palace, her enemies celebrated her upcoming failure. And somewhere deeper, prophecies waited to be fulfilled or proven false. Commander Bram Hollis arrived an hour later. A mountain of a man, easily 6.5 feet tall, built like he'd been carved from granite and old battles. Scars tracked across his bare forearms, each one a story of something survived. His eyes were the flat gray of winter ice, assessing Iris with the kind of professional detachment that made it clear he didn't care about politics or prophecies. He cared about whether she could fight. Commander Hollis, Dorian introduced him. Best warrior in the territory. He's agreed to train you, Bram grunted. Circled Iris like she was livestock he was considering purchasing. How much combat sand training have you had? None, Iris admitted. I'm a servant. We don't exactly get sword lessons. Can you shift? The question was casual. Cut deep anyway. No. My transformation has never completed. Bram stopped circling. Looked at Dorian with an expression that clearly said, Are you serious? You want me to prepare a non-shifting servant with 0 combat experience for tomorrow's trial? He glanced at the window, calculating the sun's position, roughly 18 hours. Yes, Dorian said flatly. That's why you're the best. Bram muttered something that sounded like a creative combination of curses, then turned back to Iris. All right, show me what you've got. Attack me. Iris blinked. What? You heard me. Punch, kick, bite, whatever instinct tells you to do. I need to see what I'm working with. This was humiliating. She looked at Dorian, hoping he'd intervene. He just nodded encouragingly. She turned back to Bram, this massive warrior who looked like he could snap her in half without effort, and tried to imagine actually hurting him. She swung a fist at his chest, pathetic. Weak. No power behind it. Bram caught her wrist before the blow landed. Terrible. Your stance is wrong. You telegraphed the punch from a mile away. And you aimed for the strongest part of my body instead of a vulnerable point. He released her wrist. Again. This time, commit to it. I've seen children hit harder than that. Heat flooded her face. She tried again. More force. Bram dodged easily. Swept her legs out from under her. She hit the floor hard. Breath knocked from her lungs. You're thinking too much, he said, standing over her. Combat isn't about thinking. It's about reacting. Your body knows how to protect itself. You just need to get out of your own way. He extended a hand, pulled her up. Problem is, you've spent your whole life making yourself small. That's the opposite of what you need in a fight. So how do I fix that in 18 hours? You don't fix it. You work around it. He moved to the center of the room, gestured for her to face him. You'll never be a brawler. Too small, not enough muscle mass, no training time. But you're quick, light on your feet, low center of gravity. We can use that. For the next hour, he drilled her relentlessly. No complex techniques. There was no time for that. Just dirty, practical fighting. How to use her smaller size as an advantage. Where to strike for maximum pain with minimum force. How to read an opponent's body to predict the next move. How to fall without getting hurt. How to roll away. How to use momentum against a larger body. Iris's body screamed in protest. She'd thought years of servant work had kept her fit. This was different. This was discovering muscles she didn't know she had, by making them burn. She fell repeatedly. Got knocked down. Had the wind driven from her lungs more times than she could count. But something started to shift. The seal cracked further with every hit, every burst of adrenaline. Her reflexes quickened, slightly. Her strikes landed with unexpected force. Her senses sharpened until she could track Bram's movements with unusual clarity. There, Bram said, breathing harder now after she dodged one of his attacks. That's not normal speed. You tapped into something, my Luna abilities, Iris explained, gasping, partially sealed. But stress seems to break pieces of it. Bram's eyes narrowed. Then we need more stress. He turned to Dorian. Shift. You want me to fight her. I want you to hunt her. Controlled. Obviously, you're not actually trying to hurt her, but prey instinct is different than combat training. If stress breaks the seal, terror should shatter it. Absolutely not, Dorian said immediately. I'll do it, Iris interrupted. Both men looked at her, surprised. He's right. I need to access more power, and I'm running out of time. If being hunted breaks more of the seal, that's what we do. Iris, tomorrow I face trained warriors who want to see me dead. She cut him off. This is preparation. So unless you have a better idea for unlocking my abilities in the next 17 hours, we're doing this. Dorian looked like he wanted to argue. Something in her expression stopped him. Finally he nodded, moving toward the door. Outside. The gardens. More room to run, and the guards can maintain a perimeter. His eyes met hers, stormy and conflicted. If I hurt you, you won't, Iris said with more confidence than she felt. Because I'm going to be too fast to catch. The gardens were beautiful in the late afternoon light. Cultivated wilderness, all planned chaos and hidden order. Iris stood in the center of a cleared space while Dorian moved to the far end, near the tree line. Guards had been posted around the perimeter, watching with expressions ranging from concern to morbid curiosity. Bram positioned himself near Iris. Simple rules. He hunts, you evade. Use the environment, trees, rocks, whatever helps. Don't let him corner you. When he catches you, because he will eventually, fight back. Hard as you can, he paused. And Iris. The moment you feel your power surge, don't fight it. Let it out. What if I lose control? Then we deal with it. But I suspect you've spent so long controlling yourself, suppressing everything you feel, that losing control isn't really something you're capable of. He stepped back. Ready? No, she wanted to say. She wasn't ready for any of this. Not the trials, not the combat, not having an alpha hunt her through the gardens like prey. But ready or not, dawn was coming. Ready, she lied. Bram looked at Dorian, nodded. The transformation was breathtaking. Iris had seen shifters transform before. It was a normal part of pack life, but never an alpha, never this close, never directed at her. Dorian's body rippled and reshaped, bones cracking and reforming, skin giving way to thick, dark fur. He dropped to all fours as his spine extended, his face elongating into a wolf's muzzle full of teeth designed for killing. He was massive in wolf form, easily the size of a small horse, eyes glowing silver in the fading light, those eyes fixed on her. And Iris's hindbrain screamed one word, run. She ran. Behind her, the soft thud of paws hitting earth, moving faster than anything that size should move. She dove behind a large oak just as Dorian's form flashed past where she'd been standing. Her heart hammered against her ribs, adrenaline flooding her system. She could hear him circling back, hunting. The rational part of her brain knew he wouldn't actually hurt her. The part of her that had never successfully shifted but still carried wolf instincts knew only that a predator was close. She moved quickly, kept low, used the trees for cover. Her enhanced senses, cracks in the seal now firing constantly, showed her details she'd normally miss. The pattern of broken twigs marking his path, the slight shift in air currents as he moved. The way shadows fell differently when something large disrupted them. There. To her left, she pivoted right. Scrambled over a fallen log, dropped into a small depression in the ground, pressed herself flat, controlled her breathing. Dorian's massive wolf form padded past, so close she could smell earth and pine and something distinctly him. He paused, sniffed the air. Iris held perfectly still, heart beating so loud she was certain he could hear it. Then he turned his head and looked directly at her hiding spot. Their eyes met, his glowing silver, hers wide with fear, and she saw the moment he committed to the chase. He lunged, Iris rolled, came up running, her body moving on pure instinct. The seal cracked further. She felt it like ice breaking inside her chest. Her speed increased. Her reflexes sharpened. Her senses exploded outward until she could track every movement in the garden at once. But it wasn't enough. He was still faster, still stronger, still a predator in his prime hunting someone who'd never learned to truly run. He cut her off near the fountain, blocking her escape. Iris spun, looking for another route. But he'd cornered her perfectly, the fountain at her back, a wall to her left, him blocking the only clear exit. Trapped. Use your power. Bram's voice from somewhere beyond the perimeter. Stop running and fight. Fight. How? She didn't have claws or fangs. Couldn't shift. All she had was this partial awakening of abilities she didn't understand, and the mark of the moon blessed burning against her chest. Power surged through her like lightning. making her gasp. Not the gentle warmth of the throne's recognition. Something wild and primal and vast. The seal didn't just crack. It shattered, pieces of it fell away inside her, releasing abilities that had been locked since infancy. Iris's hands began to glow with silver light. She stared at them, shocked, as the luminescence spread up her arms like liquid moonlight. The same light that had erupted from the throne, now emanating from her own body. Responding to her fear, her desperation, her absolute need to survive. Dorian's wolf form hesitated, recognizing something in her that hadn't been there moments before. Iris raised her glowing hands, acting on instinct rather than knowledge. The light coalesced, forming a barrier between them. Not solid, but tangible enough that when he tried to advance, it repelled him gently. Not violently, not with the explosive force the throne had used. Different, protective. Controlled. Good, Bram shouted. Now push back. Show dominance. Dominance. The word felt foreign. She'd never dominated anything in her life. But the power flowing through her seemed to understand what was needed. She pushed. The barrier expanded, forcing Dorian to step back. The glowing light intensified until the entire garden was bathed in silver radiance. Then, without warning, pain lanced through her body. Her bones began to shift, not completely, not into full wolf form, but something between. Iris cried out as her spine arched, as her hands curved into claws. As her senses exploded into something beyond human, the partial transformation she'd experienced as a child, except this time it wasn't stopping halfway. It was continuing. Through the haze of pain and transformation, she was dimly aware of Dorian shifting back to human form, concern etched across his face. Of Bram moving closer, monitoring, but not interfering. Of guards murmuring in shock. But mostly she was aware of the feeling of becoming. Of walls inside her crumbling. Of power that had been suppressed for 23 years, finally being allowed to exist. Of her body remembering what it was supposed to be, even if it had forgotten how to get there. The transformation stabilized in a form neither fully human nor fully wolf. Iris looked down at herself. At hands tipped with silver claws. At arms covered in a fine shimmer of power instead of fur. At a body still recognizably hers, but enhanced. Stronger, faster, more, and surrounding her, pulsing from her skin in waves, was that same silver light the throne had shown, her light. Her power, impossible, a guard whispered. But Bram was grinning like a wolf himself. Not impossible, just rare. She's manifesting a luniform, the ancient transformation that predates regular shifting. It's what the old bloodlines carried before the power was diluted over generations. Iris tried to speak. Her vocal cords weren't quite right in this form. What came out was something between words and a growl. Understandable. Inhuman. How do I change back? Dorian approached slowly, hands raised in a gesture of peace. Same way you shifted in the first place. You wanted to defend yourself. Your body responded. Now you want to return to human form. Tell your body that. It took several tries. Her form flickered between states, fully human, with this hybrid luniform. Brief flashes of something that might have been full wolf, but never solidified. Each transformation sent new waves of pain through her body as muscles and bones reshaped themselves. Finally, gasping and shaking, she collapsed back into fully human form. Dorian caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," he murmured, lowering them both to the grass. "Just breathe. First transformation is always brutal. Especially a rare form like this." Iris leaned against his chest, too exhausted to care about propriety. Her whole body felt like it had been taken apart and reassembled incorrectly. "That was incredible," Bram said, crouching nearby. "You've got raw power, girl. More than enough for tomorrow's power manifestation trial. Combat trial will still be difficult, but at least now you can defend yourself if cornered." "What about strategy?" Iris asked weakly. "How do we prepare for that?" "We don't," Dorian said quietly. "Strategy isn't something you cram in a few hours. It comes from experience. Understanding pack dynamics and politics." His arms tightened around her slightly. "But you've survived 23 years in a hostile environment without power or protection. That's strategy. You'll just have to trust the same instincts that kept you alive this long will guide you tomorrow." Bram stood, brushed dirt from his pants. "I'll leave you too. She needs rest more than more training at this point. Dawn comes early. She needs to be sharp." He nodded to Dorian. "Good luck tomorrow, Alpha. You're going to need it." After Bram left with the guards, Dorian and Iris sat in the garden as twilight deepened around them. She was still leaning against him, too tired to move. He seemed content to let her. You didn't hesitate, Iris said quietly. When Bram suggested hunting me, part of you wanted to say no. But you agreed because you knew it would help. I always hesitate when someone asks me to potentially hurt people. He paused. Iris felt his chest rise and fall with a deeper breath. People under my protection. She twisted to look up at him. In the fading light, his eyes looked darker, more troubled. What were you really going to say? Nothing important. But his gaze dropped to her lips for a fraction of a second before he looked away. We should get you back inside. You need food and sleep, Dorian. His name, soft. His eyes returned to hers. Thank you for standing by me. For believing the throne didn't make a mistake. Her voice cracked slightly. For being one of the first people in my entire life to choose me deliberately. Something broke in his expression. That careful control he always maintained. The mask of alpha authority. What emerged beneath it was raw, uncertain. A Qingli human you make it sound noble, he said roughly, like I'm doing this purely out of duty. But the truth is, he stopped, jaw working, like he was fighting words that wanted to escape. The truth is what? The truth is, I see you, Iris. Not the Luna candidate, not the political problem. I see the woman who maintained kindness in a world that showed her none, who stood before a hostile council and refused to apologize for existing, who let an alpha hunt her through the gardens because she was desperate enough to do whatever it took to survive. His hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face. And I'm terrified because I didn't expect to actually care. This was supposed to be political strategy. But somewhere between the throne room and tonight, it became real. Iris's breath caught. Dorian, you don't have to say anything. I know this isn't fair. You're facing execution tomorrow, and I'm confessing feelings like an idiot. He started to pull back. Iris caught his hand. I spent my whole life learning to be careful, she said, voice shaking slightly. Learning to survive by not wanting things I couldn't have. And then you showed up with food and conversation, and the insane idea that maybe I deserved to be seen. She held his gaze, letting him see all the fear and hope she usually kept buried. You scare me, not because you're dangerous, because you make me want things. A future. Someone who chooses me not because prophecy demands it, but because they actually want to. I do, he said immediately, fiercely. Want to. I mean, choose you. They were inches apart now, the air between them charged with everything they weren't quite saying. Iris could feel his breath against her lips, could see the conflict in his eyes, wanting to close the distance but afraid of taking advantage of her exhaustion. So she closed it instead. The kiss was soft at first, tentative. Like neither of them quite believed this was allowed. But then his hand cupped the back of her neck, pulled her closer, and it deepened into something that felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Dorian rested his forehead against hers. We shouldn't have done that. Terrible timing. The worst, Iris agreed. You're facing 3 impossible trials at dawn, and I just complicated everything by giving me something to fight for besides survival, she finished. She pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I was going to fight because the prophecy said I should, because my mother sacrificed everything, because I was tired of running. But now, she touched his face, now I want to see what happens next. With you. With us. He turned his head to press a kiss to her palm, then survive. Pass their trials. Prove them all wrong, and when it's over, Iris finished, we figure out what comes next. They sat in the garden as stars emerged overhead, holding each other like anchors in a storm. Tomorrow would bring trials designed to break her. Enemies who wanted her dead. Allies whose faith she couldn't afford to lose. But tonight, for these few stolen moments, she wasn't a Luna candidate, or a political problem, or a prophecy waiting to be fulfilled. She was just Iris, and she was chosen. The ceremonial arena had been prepared overnight. An ancient space, rarely used, carved into the earth itself with tiered stone seating rising on all sides. The floor was packed dirt, stained dark with the memory of countless trials throughout history. In the center, 3 stations had been erected, one for each trial. The council sat in a special box overlooking the arena. Vantor in the center like a king about to watch gladiators. Beside him, the noble families, dressed in their finest, treating this like entertainment rather than a woman fighting for her life. Dorian stood near the entrance, expression carefully controlled. When Iris approached, he caught her hand briefly. Squeezed once, no words. They'd said everything that mattered last night. But his touch steadied her. The accused will enter the arena. Vantor's voice boomed. magically amplified. Let the trials begin. Iris walked to the center, head high despite the fear churning in her stomach. The crowd's noise swelled, jeers and cheers mixing into an incomprehensible roar. The first trial, Vantor announced, will test combat prowess. Aluna must be able to defend her pack against threats. She will face 2 opponents of increasing difficulty. Defeat them, or be defeated and removed from consideration. A gate on the far side opened. Celine Marrow emerged, wearing light armor, a short sword strapped to her hip. Trained for combat her entire life. I volunteered for this, Celine called across the arena. I want everyone to see what happens when a pretender faces real skill. Iris had no weapon. Probably intentional. They wanted to see if her powers could compensate. She dropped into the defensive stance Bram had drilled into her. Celine attacked first. Fast, precise. Her blade whistled through the air where Iris's throat had been a second earlier. Iris twisted away, used her smaller size to dodge. Celine anticipated it anyway, her boot catching Iris's ribs, sending her sprawling. Pain exploded through her side. The crowd roared approval. Iris rolled as Celine's sword stabbed into the dirt where she'd been, came up on her feet, gasping, feeling her power surge. Her hands began to glow. Parlor tricks, Celine sneered, circling. You can't even shift properly. The old shame tried to rise. Iris pushed it down. She wasn't broken. She was different. Celine lunged again. Iris raised her glowing hands. The light formed a shield exactly like it had with Dorian the night before. The sword struck the barrier, deflected in a shower of silver sparks. Celine attacked again, faster, multiple angles. Each time Iris's shield reformed, protecting her. But maintaining it was exhausting. She could feel her power draining. The seal not yet broken enough to sustain this level of output. She needed to end this quickly. Use your advantages, Bram's words echoed. You're quick, light on your feet. Make them come to you, then strike when they're off balance. Iris dropped the shield, ran, not away, but in a circle around Celine, forcing the other woman to turn and track her movement. On the third pass, Celine swung wide, overcommitting to the strike. Iris ducked under the blade, drove her glowing fist into Celine's solar plexus. Not human strength. Channeling the Luna power through the blow, the impact sent Celine flying backward. She crashed into the arena wall. Slumped unconscious, the crowd erupted, half shocked, half outraged. Impressive, Vantor said, though his tone suggested he'd swallowed something bitter. Second opponent. Enter. The gate opened again. A massive man emerged, covered in scars, wearing the expression of someone who'd made his living on violence. He carried no weapon, didn't need one. He didn't speak. Just moved toward Iris with the steady inevitability of something worse than death. Her power was already depleted. Flickering, struggling to maintain even basic enhancement, this opponent didn't rush in. He advanced slowly, cutting off escape routes, forcing her into a corner. When he attacked, brutal efficiency. His fist connected with her shoulder before she could dodge, spinning her around. Her attempted shield formed too slowly. He punched through it. His knuckles caught her temple. Stars exploded across her vision. She tasted blood. Get up, she told herself. You promised Dorian you'd fight. You promised yourself you'd stop shrinking. But her body wasn't cooperating. The man grabbed her by the throat, lifted her off the ground with one hand, grip tightening, cutting off her air. In the stands, she could see Odile Marrow smiling with savage satisfaction, Vantor leaning forward, anticipating her death. Dorian trying to climb into the arena, held back by guards. Her vision began to gray at the edges. This was it. She'd survived 23 years of rejection and hardship. Finally discovered who she was, shared one perfect kiss with someone who chose her. And she was going to die in the dirt of an arena, strangled by a man whose name she didn't even know. Know something inside her roared in defiance. Not human, not quite wolf. Something ancient and vast and absolutely unwilling to surrender. The mark of the moon blessed erupted with light so bright it was blinding. Power exploded from her body, raw and desperate. The man was thrown backward with enough force to crater the arena wall. Iris collapsed to her hands and knees, gasping for air. Silver light pouring from her skin like she'd become a star fallen to earth. She could feel it now. The final barriers of her seal shattering completely. All the power her mother had locked away flooding through her system at once. Too much. Too fast. Her body wasn't ready for this much raw power, but it was her only chance. She pushed herself to her feet. Silver flames wrapping around her arms, the massive man recovered. Charged again, this time Iris didn't defend. She attacked. Faster than human eyes could track, her Luna form partially manifesting, not fully transformed but enhanced, stronger. More, she struck him once, twice, 3 times, each blow channeling power she was barely controlling. The 4th strike dropped him. He hit the ground and didn't rise. The arena had gone completely silent. "Third opponent," Vantor said, voice tight. "Enter." The gate didn't open. "There is no third opponent, Elder Vantor." Bram's voice carried from the stands. "You only prepared 2. If you want a third, you'll have to face her yourself." The challenge hung dangerous and pointed. Vantor couldn't fight her. Counsel, not a warrior. Refusing after she'd defeated 2 opponents would make it clear this trial had been designed to kill her, not test her. "The combat trial is complete," Dorian said, stepping into the arena, moving to stand beside Iris. "She has proven her ability to defend the pack. We proceed to the second trial." Vantor looked like he wanted to argue. Other council members were nodding. He'd lost this round, and they both knew it. "Very well," he said coldly. The second trial tests strategic thinking. A large table was brought into the arena, covered with a map of the territory and surrounding regions. Tokens and markers indicated pack positions. Resources. "Threats. The scenario," Vantor said, descending to the table. "The Eastern Territory has launched a surprise attack on our borders. Their forces outnumber ours 2 to 1. Simultaneously, a plague has broken out in our southern villages, requiring healers and resources. You have limited warriors and even more limited supplies. What do you do? A nightmare scenario." No good answers. Only varying degrees of loss. Iris stared at the map. This wasn't her strength. But she understood people, understood survival, and she understood sometimes the obvious answer was the wrong one. "I evacuate the southern villages," she said slowly, working through it as she spoke. "Move the sick and healthy alike to the fortified northern region, away from both plague and border conflict. Abandoning territory shows weakness," Vantor countered. "Abandoning sick people to die shows cruelty." She moved tokens across the map. "The Eastern Territory wants our land, but they don't want plague. Moving the infected toward fortified positions means they either retreat because attacking plague victims makes them look like monsters, or risk their own forces getting sick," she continued, tracing supply lines. "Meanwhile, I send a small force not to fight, but to sabotage their supply lines. Make the invasion costly. Make them ask if the land is worth the price." "You'd refuse to defend our borders directly," Odile called. "What kind of Luna runs from a fight?" "The kind who understands winning isn't always about direct confrontation," Iris said, her voice carrying. "You want me to throw our warriors against a force twice our size? We'd lose. Everyone would die trying to hold ground that can be retaken later. But if I save our people, make the invasion expensive, and force the enemy to question their strategy, we survive to fight another day, on terms that favor us." She looked directly at Vantor. "You asked what I'd do. That's what I'd do. Save people first. Protect territory second. Make our enemies regret attacking us, even if we can't stop them immediately." Vantor's jaw tightened. Unconventional. "Arguably cowardly. Cowardly would be sacrificing people to maintain appearances," Dorian said, voice hard. "She's thinking like someone who's actually had to survive impossible situations. Not someone who learned strategy from books." Other council members were nodding. Discussing among themselves, "The second trial is acceptable," Vantor conceded finally, each word looking painful, "which brings us to the final trial. Power manifestation." His smile turned cruel. "Demonstrate that you possess true Luna bloodline abilities. Show us the power that supposedly qualifies you to lead." This was what everything had been building toward. The moment of truth, Iris stood in the center of the arena, still glowing from the previous fight. She could feel the power thrumming through her veins, no longer sealed but also not entirely under control, like holding lightning, dangerous, unstable, barely contained. While Vantor prompted, "We're waiting," Iris closed her eyes, reached for the power Ione had told her about. The abilities that made ancient Lunas more than just strong shifters. A bridge between worlds. A conduit for the moon goddess's power. She just had to figure out how to pain lanced through her chest. Not from injury, from something else. Something wrong. Iris's eyes snapped open as realization crashed over her. The silver light pouring from her body wasn't just power manifesting. It was power escaping. The seal hadn't broken cleanly. It had shattered, and now her abilities were leaking out uncontrolled. She was burning through her life force, Iris, Dorian's voice, concerned. He could see it too. The way her light was beginning to flicker. The way her body was starting to tremble. I'm fine. She lied, trying to pull the power back under control. But it was like trying to catch water in her hands. The harder she grasped, the more slipped through her fingers. In the stands, Elder Vantor smiled, not surprise. Not shock, something worse. Recognition. The particular satisfaction of a man watching his own plan unfold exactly as designed. He'd known this would happen. Fascinating, Vantor said, voice carrying clearly. It appears the girl is burning out. Happens sometimes when someone accesses power they're not meant to wield. The body rejects abilities that don't truly belong to it. That's a lie, Dorian snarled. Her seal was broken improperly. Or perhaps there was never any real power to seal. Vantor's voice was smooth as oil. Perhaps what we've witnessed today was nothing more than borrowed magic. Stolen power that's now consuming its thief, murmurs rippled through the crowd. Fear, disgust, vindication. They'd been right all along. She was a fraud. Iris fell to her knees, the silver light pulsing erratically. She could feel herself dying. Could feel the power that was supposed to save her, instead burning her from the inside out. And in that moment, she understood. This had been the plan all along. The trials had never been about proving herself. They'd been about forcing her to use power she couldn't control. Breaking her seal prematurely. Letting her destroy herself from within. Vantor had orchestrated everything. The combat that forced her to access her abilities. The pressure that shattered the seal completely. The final demand for manifestation that would make her burn out spectacularly in front of everyone. He'd turned her own power into a weapon against her. Someone help her, Dorian was shouting, trying to reach her, but guards held him back. She's dying. She's revealing herself, Vantor corrected coldly, as the fraud we always knew she was. The throne may have glowed, but that doesn't make her worthy. It makes her a magical anomaly. Iris's vision blurred. The arena spun around her. She could feel her heartbeat slowing. Her body shutting down as the uncontrolled power consumed her from within. She was going to die here, in front of everyone, proving Vantor right, proving she was never meant to survive. Through the haze of pain, she saw Dorian finally break through the guards, running toward her. Saw the desperation on his face. Saw him reaching for her like he could somehow pull her back from death through sheer force of will. But she was already falling, down into darkness, down into the space between heartbeats, down into silver light, pure and vast and ancient. Her hand found Dorian's an instant before her eyes closed. His fingers closed around hers, and for one heartbeat, she felt his warmth pouring into her like he could hold her here through touch alone. Then even that faded. The last thing she heard was Bram Hollis. 30 years of iron discipline breaking in his voice, shouting something that sounded like her name. The last thing she felt was the ground, cold against her back. And then nothing. Iris Wesley's heart stopped beating in the dirt of the ceremonial arena, in front of hundreds of witnesses, in front of the man who loved her, in front of the enemy who'd killed her mother and was now watching her die with a smile on his face. The silver light around her guttered, flickered, and went out completely. In the arena, Iris's body had gone still. Dorian held her against his chest, feeling for a heartbeat that was barely there, a faint flutter growing weaker with each passing second. The silver light that had been consuming her flared to blinding brightness, then vanished completely. Now she lay limp in his arms, skin cold, breathing so shallow it was almost imperceptible. "No," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers. "No, you don't get to leave. Not now, not after everything." Around them, the arena had descended into chaos, some celebrating her apparent death, vindicated in their belief she'd been a fraud all along. Others looked uncertain, disturbed by watching someone die slowly in public. A few, very few, looked genuinely grieved. Bram Hollis stood at the edge of the dais, fists clenched so tight his knuckles had gone white. 30 years a soldier, he'd watched men die before. He'd never once looked like this. Elder Vantor stood at the edge of the arena, expression carefully neutral, but underneath it, Dorian saw something else entirely. This was what he'd wanted. "What he'd planned for, she's gone," Vantor announced, voice magically amplified across the arena. "The throne's light has extinguished along with the girl's life. Nature has rendered its verdict. She was never meant to bear Luna power. The trials are concluded, the accused has failed. By virtue of death, thunder cracked across a cloudless sky. The sound was so loud, so unexpected, that everyone in the arena froze. Air pressure dropped suddenly, making ears pop. The temperature plummeted, as if winter had arrived in the space between heartbeats. In Dorian's arms, Iris's body began to glow again. Not the flickering, dying light from before. This was different. Stronger, deliberate. Silver luminescence poured from her skin in waves, not consuming her but emanating from her, like she'd become a living star. Her mark blazed so bright it was visible through her clothing. Dorian felt her heartbeat strengthen, felt warmth return to her skin, felt her body arch as she drew in a gasping breath. Her eyes opened. Silver, completely silver, not just the irises but the whites too, glowing with inner light. When she looked at him, he saw recognition, saw her, but also something more. Something vast and ancient, looking through her eyes. Iris, she smiled. Tender. Familiar. Hers, I'm here. Her voice carried harmonics it hadn't before, multiple tones speaking in unison. I'm still me, just more, she stood. Dorian had to release her, had to watch as she rose to her feet in one fluid motion. The silver light intensified, spreading across the arena floor like liquid mercury. Where it touched, symbols appeared, the same ancient markings that covered the sacred throne, now burning themselves into the packed earth. The crowd gasped. Some moved toward the exits. Most were frozen, unable to look away. Iris turned to face the council platform where Vantor stood, his carefully neutral expression cracking into something that looked like fear. You wanted proof of Luna bloodline, she said, and the power in her words made the air vibrate. You wanted to see power worthy of the throne. So watch, she raised her hands. The earth responded. The arena floor cracked, reshaping itself according to her will. Stone pillars rose from the ground, each one carved with flowing symbols. In the center, beneath her feet, a platform began to grow, not built, but grown from the earth itself, rising until she stood elevated above everyone. Impossible. Someone whispered, that's ancient magic. No one's done that in 3 centuries. You said I couldn't shift properly, Iris said, silver eyes fixed on Vantor. You were right. I can't shift into a normal wolf. Want to know why? She didn't wait for an answer. Her body began to transform. Not the partial hybrid from the garden, something that made the entire crowd gasp in awe and terror. Silver light wrapped round her like living armor. Her forms expanded, grew, became something between wolf and human and pure celestial energy. 8 feet tall, covered in what looked like moonlight made solid. Eyes burning with silver fire, claws of pure energy extending from her hands, the luniform in its full manifestation. This, her voice resonated through the arena, is what the throne recognized. This is what my mother sealed to protect me. This is what you tried to destroy because you were afraid of what it represented. She descended from the platform, each step deliberate. Moving toward the council box, guards moved to intercept her. One look from those silver eyes sent them scrambling back. This wasn't something you fought. This was something you worshipped or ran from, Elder Vantor. She stopped at the base of the council platform. You orchestrated the Great Purge 23 years ago. You ordered the assassination of Luna bloodlines because you were afraid of their power, afraid they'd expose corruption in the council, afraid they'd return leadership to what it should be, rather than what you'd twisted it into. You have no proof of these accusations? Vantor's face had gone pale. I have the memories of the earth itself. Iris pressed her glowing hand to the ground. Silver light spread outward like cracks in ice. Shall I ask this land what happened 23 years ago? Shall I make it show everyone here the orders you gave, the assassins you hired, the Luna bloodlines you systematically eliminated? This is slander. His voice shook. The ravings of a girl drunk on stolen power. Enough. The word cracked across the arena like a physical force. Her power surged. The ground trembled. Everyone present felt the weight of something vast and terrible and utterly beyond their ability to control. I spent 23 years believing I was worthless, because people like you told me I was. I survived because my mother loved me enough to hide me from your murderous ambition. And I nearly died today because you were so afraid of what I represented that you tried to kill me in front of witnesses and call it justice. Her eyes blazed brighter. So no, Elder Vantor, you don't get to speak anymore. You don't get to judge or condemn or twist truth into lies. Your time controlling this territory through fear is over, she gestured. Silver light wrapped around Vantor like chains. Not painful. Completely immobilizing. He couldn't move, couldn't speak, could only stand frozen as living evidence of his crimes. Iris turned to address the crowd. The throne didn't make a mistake. It recognized what this territory needed. Not another puppet who would maintain broken systems. Someone who understood what it meant to be powerless in a world that crushed the vulnerable. She looked at the other council members. How many of you knew what Vantor did? How many of you helped cover up the Great Purge? 3 of the 12 wouldn't meet her eyes. Their guilt was written plainly across their faces. I could destroy you all, she said softly, and the threat was more terrifying for its gentle delivery. The power flowing through me right now could reshape this entire territory according to my will. She let that sink in, let them feel the helplessness of facing something they couldn't fight or control. Then she stepped back. The silver chains around Vantor dissolved. Her luniform began to recede. The massive celestial manifestation compressing back into her normal human body. The glow faded from her eyes, leaving them their natural color, though something of that silver light remained visible in certain angles. But I won't, Iris said, in her own voice, smaller now but no less powerful. Because that would make me exactly like you. Someone who uses power to crush others instead of lift them up. She walked to the center of the arena, standing where she'd nearly died minutes earlier. Elder Vantor and any council members who aided him will face trial for their crimes. Real trial. Evidence and witnesses, not the mockery of justice they subjected me to. If found guilty, they'll be exiled, not executed, because I won't start my leadership with blood. But removed from power permanently, murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Even those who'd been hostile to her seemed swayed by her mercy in the face of attempted murder. She turned, looked up at Bram Hollis, standing at the edge of the dais, and something passed between them that words couldn't quite carry. Bram stepped forward, slow, deliberate, and for the first time in 30 years of service, in front of every soldier who'd ever called him hard, Commander Bram Hollis went down on one knee. I staked my rank on you, he said, voice rough. My pension. What's left of my name in this territory. He looked up at her. I'd stake it again tomorrow. This, he gestured at the chains that had just dissolved from, around a man he'd once obeyed without question. This is the kind of leader I've spent 30 years waiting to serve. Not because you're strong, because you were strong enough to choose mercy when you didn't have to be. The arena had gone quiet enough to hear the wind move through it. Iris crossed to him, placed a hand on his shoulder. Get up, Commander. I need you standing beside me. Not kneeling, he rose, and something in his weathered face, something that hadn't cracked in 3 decades of war and loss and hard decisions, cracked now. Yes, Luna, he said, and meant it. Dorian vaulted over the arena wall, moving to stand beside her. In front of hundreds of witnesses, he took her hand, the gesture deliberate. Public, I choose you, he said quietly, but his voice carried. Not the Luna candidate, not the prophecy, you, Iris, the woman who survived everything they threw at her and came back stronger, even though I'm terrifying now. A small smile broke through her exhaustion, especially because you're terrifying now. He pulled her closer, forehead touching hers. Though you could have warned me about the whole 8-foot celestial warrior thing. Nearly gave me a heart attack. I nearly gave myself a heart attack, Iris admitted. Then, louder, addressing the crowd. I know most of you don't want me. I know you think I'm unqualified, unworthy, that I rose above my station. And you're right, I am unqualified by your old standards. She looked across the sea of faces. But maybe that's exactly what this territory needs. Someone who remembers what it's like to be powerless. Someone who won't forget that leadership is service, not domination. A long moment of silence. Then from somewhere in the crowd, someone began to clap. Slowly at first, then joined by others. Not everyone. There were still plenty who looked disgusted, or angry, but enough to suggest that maybe, possibly, she could win them over with time. The ceremony that followed was hastily assembled but traditional. Iris stood before what remained of the legitimate council and spoke the oaths that bound her to the territory. Dorian stood beside her, speaking his own vows of partnership and protection. When they finished, the silver light dormant in the arena floor surged upward, wrapping around both of them in a visible display of the bond forming. Beautiful and terrifying and absolutely undeniable. The throne, sensing its Luna claimed and recognized, rose from the palace behind them and floated across the territory, settling gently onto the platform Iris had grown from the earth. It glowed the moment it touched down. There, Iris said, looking perfectly comfortable on a throne that had rejected hundreds of candidates before her. Now it's official, Dorian laughed, genuine amusement breaking through the tension. You just moved a 300-year-old sacred relic like it was furniture. It's my furniture now. She patted the armrest. The throne and I have an understanding. As the crowd slowly dispersed, still processing everything they'd witnessed, a woman approached the platform. Weathered face, a scar along one cheek, the bearing of someone who'd spent a lifetime surviving things that should have killed her. She stopped at the base of the steps, bowed her head. My name is Roswyn, she said. I served your mother, Luna Isadora, in the northern wildlands. Before the purge scattered us to the winds, she raised her eyes, and Iris saw something fierce and grieving in them both at once. 17 of us survived. We've spent 23 years searching for Isadora's daughter. Waiting for the day the throne would call her home, Iris felt something crack open in her chest. 17 of you, alive. This whole time, we swore an oath to your mother. If anything happened to her, we would find you, protect you. Ensure her sacrifice wasn't for nothing, Roswyn's voice thickened. We watched from the shadows today. Watched you choose mercy over vengeance, exactly as she would have. You knew her, Iris said softly. Really knew her, I did. Roswyn managed a small, sad smile. She was fierce, and she was kind, and she never once used her power to make anyone smaller than they already felt. She looked at Iris a long moment. You're more like her than you know. Bram, standing nearby, studied the newcomer with the careful assessment of a soldier, sizing up another soldier. Something passed between them, unspoken. Recognition of shared purpose. There are forces beyond Vantor still watching this territory, Roswyn added, voice lowering. The Great Purge wasn't the work of one man. It was a coalition. Some of them are still out there, still afraid of what you represent. Then let them be afraid, Bram said. We could use 17 warriors who know how to fight the kind of shadow war that's coming. Roswyn nodded once. That's exactly why we're here. Weeks passed. Iris rebuilt the council with survivors and reformers, standing where corruption had once sat undisturbed. She stripped Vantor and his 3 collaborators of rank, and watched them ride out through the northern gate under armed escort, exiled and stripped of everything but their lives. She opened the doors of leadership to servants and soldiers and ordinary people who all spent their lives being told they didn't matter. The palace itself began to change. Windows where there had been none. Doors that used to require a noble seal now simply opened for anyone with a petition and the patience to wait their turn. She began drafting plans for a school. One where every child, regardless of bloodline, would be taught that their worth wasn't measured by what they could or couldn't shift into. On a gray morning near the end of her first month as Luna, a servant announced a visitor from the Western Territory. Alpha Marathine Kestrel entered the throne room alone, without the usual retinue of guards and advisors that marked a territorial leader's formal visits. I've watched your reforms from across the border, Marin said, standing before the throne with none of the hostility Iris had grown used to from visiting nobility. My daughter can't shift properly either. She's 12. She spent her whole life being told shit. Marin's voice caught, just slightly. Your story gave her hope for the first time. I'm here to propose an alliance, not out of politics. Out of gratitude, Iris felt the weight of that settle somewhere deep and permanent. Bring her here, she said. Let her see for herself that different isn't the same as broken. There's something else, Marin added, her expression darkening. Roswyn isn't wrong about what's still out there. I've had reports. Territories east of here are quietly gathering forces, watching what you're building with real fear. If what your survivor says is true, this alliance you're forming might be the only thing standing between us and whatever comes next. Iris exchanged a glance with Bram, who'd been standing quiet sentinel near the dais since the moment Marin entered. Then we prepare, Iris said, but not with fear. With everything we've built, Marin studied her a long moment, then inclined her head, something between respect and relief settling over her face. That, she said, is exactly the answer I was hoping to hear. Bram found her in the training yard 3 days later, alone, working through the forms he'd taught her weeks earlier. Slower now. Deliberate. Not fighting for her life this time, just trying to keep her body honest. He watched a while before speaking. You've been out here every morning since the coronation? Old habit? Iris didn't stop moving. When I don't know what to do with my hands, I fight the air. Used to be I'd scrub floors instead. Same instinct. Different weapon. He crossed his arms. Marin's alliance is solid. Roswin's warriors are already training with our guard. But an alliance built on fear of what's coming isn't the same as being ready for it. Iris lowered her arms. Looked at him properly. You think I'm not ready? I think you've spent 1 month learning to rule a territory that spent 23 years telling you that you didn't deserve to exist in it. His voice, for once, wasn't hard. I think you're doing the impossible and doing it well. And I think somebody needs to say that to you plainly, because everyone else in this palace is either afraid of you or in love with you, and neither one of them is going to tell you the truth. Something in her chest loosened. And you will. Every time. He almost smiled. You asked me once why I staked everything on a servant girl I'd never met. It wasn't the throne. It wasn't the prophecy. It was watching you get knocked down in this exact yard, more times than I could count, and get back up every single time without once asking anyone to feel sorry for you. Iris looked away, throat tight. I didn't have much choice. That's not true anymore. Bram's gaze didn't waver. Now you do, and you're still choosing to get back up. That's the part worth staking a life on. The eastern border reports grew more frequent through the following weeks. Roswin's warriors integrated seamlessly into the territory's defense, their unfamiliar fighting styles, teaching the guard new ways to move, new ways to think about ground they'd always assumed was safe. Iris spent her evenings in the war room now, more often than the throne room. Maps of the coalition's suspected movements pinned beside maps of her own borders. Dorian at her side through most of it, though the conversations had changed shape since the arena. Less negotiation, more partnership. They're testing us, Dorian said one night, tracing a finger along the eastern ridge on the map. Small incursions. Nothing committed yet. They want to know if the alliance with Marin's territory is real coordination or just words on a treaty. Then we show them it's real. Iris studied the map, the tactical instincts she'd built in 24 desperate hours now, something closer to habit. Roswin's people know that terrain better than anyone we have. Send a joint patrol, ours and hers, together, visible. Dorian looked at her a long moment. You're already thinking like someone who's done this before. I spent 23 years reading rooms before anyone noticed me in them. She met his eyes. Turns out, that's a kind of strategy too. He reached over, covered her hand with his on the edge of the map table. Not a grand gesture, just steady. Present. Whatever's coming, he said. We face it the way we've faced everything else. Together, she finished. On a quiet afternoon near the edge of the eastern quarter, Iris walked alone through the newly built streets, her Luna presence muted, appearing as just another citizen among the market crowds. Children ran past, laughing. Vendors called their wares. A territory learning, slowly, what it felt like to breathe without constant fear. She found the girl sitting on the front steps of a modest home, knees pulled to her chest, red-rimmed eyes fixed on nothing. Rough day, Iris said, settling onto the step beside her without ceremony. The girl looked up, startled, then wide-eyed with recognition. You're her, the Luna. The one who couldn't shift either. I really am. They say I'm broken, the girl whispered. That I'll never be a real wolf. Iris felt the old wound reopen, familiar and sharp, but she'd learned something over these long weeks. Pain had value when you used it to lift someone else up. Can I tell you a secret? Iris said. I still can't shift the normal way. Even now. My transformation doesn't work like everyone else's. The girl's eyes went wide. Really, really. And you know what I've learned? Being different isn't the same as being broken. We're not failing at being normal wolves. Iris smiled. We're succeeding at being something the world hasn't seen enough of, yet to have a name for. What if I never figure out what that something is? Then you figure it out with people who understand. You're not alone. There are others like you in this territory, and I'm building something for all of you. Training that works with what you have, instead of forcing you into a shape that doesn't fit. Hope flickered, fragile and real. Across the girl's face. You'd do that. For me, for you. And for every child who ever sat somewhere feeling like they didn't belong. Iris held her gaze. The next time someone tells you you're broken, I want you to remember something. The most powerful throne in this territory looked at a servant who couldn't shift and chose her. Not the daughters with perfect bloodlines. Because being different made her exactly right for what was needed. The girl managed a small, wondering smile. Iris rose, walked back toward the palace as the sun dropped low and gold over rooftops that no longer felt like someone else's world. She thought about her mother running through snow with a baby wrapped against the cold. About Bram. 30 years of hardness cracking open in an arena that had almost buried her. About Roswen and 17 survivors who'd kept a promise for 23 years. About Dorian. Waiting for her now at the top of the palace steps, watching her cross the courtyard with an expression that still, after everything, looked like disbelief that she was real. There was still a war coming. She knew that now, the way she'd learned to know most hard truths without flinching from them. But for tonight, standing in a territory that had learned, slowly and imperfectly, what it meant to be led by someone who remembered what it felt like to be powerless, Iris allowed herself one full breath of something that felt, unmistakably, like peace. She had been a servant who sat on the wrong throne. She had become exactly what it needed, and whatever came next, she would not be facing it alone.